Why Vamps Ep22 Shadows of the Past. Into the shadows. The forest loomed before Arya, its towering trees casting long, menacing shadows under the pale light of the moon. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Every rustle and creak amplified in the eerie stillness. Her heart pounded in her chest, the sound almost deafening in the oppressive silence. She had no choice but to enter. Behind her, the city held too many dangers, and ahead, the forest was her only chance of escape. Arya plunged into the dense foliage, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of leaves and undergrowth. The darkness was almost absolute, the moonlight barely penetrating the thick canopy above. She moved as quickly and quietly as she could, her senses on high alert, every muscle in her body tense with fear. Daniel was out there, somewhere in the shadows, his presence an almost palpable force. His supernatural abilities gave him an undeniable edge, his speed and strength far surpassing her own. She could feel him closing in, the hairs on the back of her neck, standing on end with the certainty of his pursuit. Branches clawed at her clothes, snagging her hair and scratching her skin. But she pressed on, driven by sheer determination and the instinct to survive. The forest was an unfamiliar maze, each turn and twist leading her deeper into the unknown. She could hear the distant calls of nocturnal animals, their cries echoing through the trees, adding to her growing sense of dread. Arya's breath came in ragged gasps, her lungs burning with the effort. She stumbled over roots and rocks, her pace faltering as exhaustion began to take its toll. Every now and then, she would catch a glimpse of movement in the periphery of her vision. A shadow flitting between the trees, and she knew it was Daniel, tracking her with relentless precision. Desperation clawed at her insides, a gnawing fear that she would never find a way out of this dark, oppressive forest. The thought of being caught, of facing whatever fate Daniel had in store for her, was almost too much to bear. She pushed the fear down, focusing instead on putting one foot in front of the other, on finding a path that might lead her to safety. As the hours dragged on, her sense of direction faltered. Every tree, every rock looked the same in the dim light, and she realized with a sinking heart that she was hopelessly lost. The forest seemed to close in around her, the darkness pressing in from all sides, suffocating and relentless. A sudden noise behind her, a snap of a twig, the rustle of Levicent, a jolt of panic through her. She spun around, her eyes wide with fear, but saw nothing. She knew, though, that Daniel was there, lurking, just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. The thought of his presence, so close and yet unseen, filled her with a cold dread. She stumbled forward, her steps becoming more erratic, her movements frantic. The forest seemed to stretch on endlessly, an impenetrable labyrinth that offered no escape. Her strength was waning, her legs trembling with fatigue. She fought to stay upright, to keep moving, but the weight of hopelessness was pressing down on her, threatening to crush her spirit. Tears blurred her vision, and she wiped them away angrily, refusing to give in to despair. Just when she thought she could go no further, she saw a faint light in the distance. It flickered like a beacon, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Arya's heart leapt, and she summoned the last of her strength, pushing herself towards the light. The closer she got, the more she realized that the light was coming from a small, dilapidated cabin, hidden deep within the forest. It wasn't much, but it was shelter, a place to hide, to catch her breath and maybe, just maybe, find a way to outwit Daniel. She burst through the door, her chest heaving, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. The interior of the cabin was dimly lit by a single, flickering candle, casting long shadows on the walls. Arya quickly scanned the room, her eyes landing on a heavy wooden bar that could be used to secure the door. With trembling hands, she slid the bar into place, the solid thud offering a small measure of comfort. She collapsed onto the floor, her back against the wall, and tried to steady her breathing. The cabin was quiet, save for the sound of her own rapid heartbeat and the faint rustle of the trees outside. But the respite was short-lived. A sudden, loud bang against the door jolted her from her momentary peace. Daniel was there, his strength evident in the force of his blows. The door shuddered under the impact, and Arya knew it wouldn't hold for long. "Arya, let me in." Daniel's voice was muffled but insistent, a mix of anger and desperation. "I just want to talk." She shook her head, her mind racing. She couldn't let him in, couldn't trust his words after everything she had seen and learned. She had to find another way out, had to stay one step ahead. Her eyes darted around the cabin, searching for an escape route. There, in the corner, was a small, grimy window. It was a tight fit, but it might be her only chance. She scrambled to her feet, her movements fueled by a renewed sense of urgency. With a final, desperate glance at the door, she climbed through the window, the rough edges of the frame scraping against her skin. She dropped to the ground outside, her landing cushioned by the thick undergrowth. She didn't wait to see if Daniel had broken through the door. She ran, the forest once again closing in around her, the darkness her only ally. Her legs were heavy, her body screaming in protest, but she couldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. As she pushed forward, deeper into the unknown, the sense of dread and hopelessness threatened to overwhelm her. But she held onto a sliver of hope, a small, fragile belief that she could find a way out. That she could evade capture and reclaim her freedom. The forest was a relentless adversary, but Arya's spirit remained unbroken. She had come too far to give up now. With every step, she forged a path through the darkness, her resolve a beacon that guided her through the night. And somewhere behind her, Daniel continued his pursuit. His presence a constant reminder of the danger that lurked in the shadows. But for now, Arya had the advantage of the unknown, the labyrinthine forest her temporary sanctuary. She would find a way out. She had to, for herself, for her future, for the hope of a life free from fear and oppression. The journey was far from over, but Arya was determined to see it through, no matter what challenges lay ahead.